You arrive at a secluded military reservation just off Interstate 64 in York County, Virginia. The chain-link fences stretch into dense woodland, topped with barbed wire that catches the winter light. Guard towers stand watch over what locals only whisper about. The sign reads, Armed Forces Experimental Training Activity. But everyone knows what this place really is. Camp Peary. 9,000 acres of secrets hidden in plain sight. The CIA's crucible where America's spies are forged or broken. This is the farm. And the trees surrounding you are the last living things that won't lie to your face. Inside these woods, reality becomes negotiable. Your name isn't your name anymore. Your past doesn't exist. Every conversation is a test. Every friendship might be surveillance. And somewhere in the shadows, instructors with decades of field experience are watching your every move, waiting for you to crack under the weight of becoming someone you're not. Most people who walk through these gates don't make it out the other side. Not as CIA officers anyway. The washout rate whispers through intelligence circles like a ghost story. Some sources suggest, as far as witnesses say, that failure rates can approach those of elite military special operations programs, where 40 to 80% don't make it through selection. You're standing at the threshold of one of the most demanding training programs on Earth, and the odds are already stacked against you. You're tuned to the Velvet Obscura. Tonight, we're looking into one of America's most secretive institutions, a place that has trained generations of case officers who operate in the shadows of foreign capitals, recruiting spies, stealing secrets, and shaping world events from behind false identities. The farm has been molding intelligence operatives since the early days of the Cold War, and its methods remain largely classified even today. If you're finding these stories help you drift off, I'd really appreciate a quick like or subscribe. It helps more than you know. And I'm always curious where you're listening from tonight. Drop a comment with your location and let me know if you've ever wondered what it takes to become a real spy. Now, settle in somewhere warm, maybe light a candle against the winter darkness, and let's walk together through the experience that breaks most people who attempt it. We're exploring why you probably wouldn't survive CIA training at the farm. The gate opens. A black Suburban with tinted windows escorts you down a narrow road cutting through Virginia pine and oak. The trees press close on both sides, their bare winter branches forming a tunnel of gray and brown that blocks out the sky. You catch glimpses of structures through the woods, buildings that look like a college campus, a water tower, what might be dormitories. Then the forest thickens again, and you see nothing but wilderness. When you finally stop, you're standing in front of a nondescript building that could be anywhere. A conference center, a corporate retreat facility. Except for the fact that there are no signs, no markers, nothing to indicate what happens inside these walls. An instructor meets you at the door. Mid-40s, unremarkable features, dressed in casual civilian clothes. The kind of person you'd walk past on any street without a second glance. That's the point. This is what a real CIA officer looks like. Forgettable. Leave your phone in the car, the instructor says. Along with your watch, your wallet, anything with your real name on it. For the next 6 months, you don't exist. Your family thinks you're on assignment with some boring consulting firm. Your friends think you've taken a sabbatical. The world outside these fences doesn't matter anymore. There's only here. There's only now. And there's only the person we're going to teach you to become. You hand over your devices, your identity, your connection to everything that came before this moment. The instructor gives you a thin folder. Inside is a legend, a false identity that you'll memorize down to the smallest detail. A background that you'll live and breathe until it becomes more real than your actual past. This is your first test, And it started the moment you walked through that door. Because in the CIA, everyone is always watching. Everyone is always testing. And failure can come from the smallest slip. The dormitory room is sparse. A bed, a desk, a closet. The walls are institutional white. There are no decorations, no personal touches, nothing that would make this space feel like home. Through the window, you can see other buildings arranged around a central quad. As far as witnesses say, the farm is designed to look like a small liberal arts college. There's even what appears to be a main street of sorts, with storefronts and a town square. But every person you see in those spaces is either an instructor or another trainee. This entire world is a simulation. A stage set where you'll rehearse for missions that could one day get you killed. Sleep doesn't come easy that first night. Your mind races through the legend in your folder. Your new name, your new birthday, your new employment history. The story of a life you've never lived, but must now inhabit so completely that you could wake from a dead sleep and recite every detail without hesitation. Because out there, in the real world, a moment of confusion about your cover story could mean a bullet or a black site prison cell. The alarm goes off at 5 in the morning. No gradual wake-up. Just a shrill electronic screech that yanks you from whatever shallow sleep you manage to find. You stumble into the hallway and join other recruits moving toward the gymnasium. Most of you are in your late 20s or early 30s, though one woman looks barely old enough to have finished college. You learn later that she's a prodigy, recruited straight from university, the top of her class, the kind of person the agency bets on. Physical training at the farm isn't about making you into a soldier. You're not here to kick down doors or run obstacle courses under barbed wire. The CIA isn't the military, but you do need to be fit enough to survive in the field, fit enough to run surveillance for 12 hours straight, fit enough to escape if things go wrong. The workout is brutal. Bodyweight exercises, runs through the muddy winter woods, exercises designed to push you past comfort into the zone where mistakes happen and instructors can see how you respond under physical stress. By the time you reach the showers, you're already exhausted. And the day hasn't even started yet. Breakfast is in a cafeteria that looks like any other institutional dining hall. Except the food is surprisingly good. The CIA learned long ago that keeping operatives well-fed improves performance. But even here, even in this moment of relative peace, the testing continues. You sit with other trainees and attempt small talk. What you don't realize is that some of these people aren't trainees at all. They're instructors, playing roles, listening for any slip in your cover story. Testing whether you can maintain your legend even in casual conversation over scrambled eggs. Someone asks where you're from. You give them the city from your legend. They ask what you did there. You recite your cover employment history. It feels natural, it feels right. But inside, your heart is hammering because you know this is the first of thousands of tests. And each one matters. Each one is logged. Each one goes into a file that will determine whether you stay or wash out. After breakfast, the real work begins. You're herded into a classroom that could be at any corporate training facility. Whiteboards, projectors, comfortable chairs. But the material being taught is unlike anything you'd find in the civilian world. This is tradecraft, the foundational skills of espionage that have been refined over decades of field operations. How to run a surveillance detection route, how to spot a tail, how to conduct a brush pass or service a dead drop, how to communicate using burst transmissions and one-time pads. The instructor speaks in a measured monotone. Former case officer, obviously. probably spent 20 years operating in Moscow or Beijing or Tehran, now teaching the next generation how to survive in hostile territory. The lecture moves fast. Information comes in torrents. You're expected to absorb complex techniques on the first pass. There are no do-overs in the field. There are no second chances when you're meeting an asset in a restaurant and you spot counterintelligence in the corner. Halfway through the morning, the instructor stops. "Pop quiz," she announces. The room goes silent. She starts firing questions, details from the lecture, specific procedures, technical information about communication protocols. You fumble through the answers. Some you know, some you guess, some you get completely wrong. The instructor doesn't smile, doesn't frown, just makes notes on her tablet and moves on to the next person. Later, you'll learn that every quiz, every test, every evaluation feeds into the murder board. As far as witnesses say, the murder board is what trainees call the class ranking system. Every week, after assessments are conducted, results are posted. You see exactly where you stand compared to everyone else. If you're at the top, you feel the pressure to maintain that position. If you're at the bottom, you feel the terror of knowing that one more poor performance might end your dream of becoming a CIA officer. Some believe that hitting the bottom of the list more than once means automatic dismissal. Others think you get 3 strikes. No one knows for sure. The ambiguity is intentional. The uncertainty keeps everyone striving harder. By midday, your Mejota moved into practical exercises. This is where theory meets reality. You're taken to what looks like a normal suburban street, complete with houses, mailboxes, parked cars. But this street exists inside the wire at Camp Peary. It's a stage set, a practice ground where you'll learn to mark signal sites with chalk, conduct dead drops by leaving packages in predetermined locations, and execute the choreographed ballet of clandestine communication. You're given a piece of chalk and told to mark 3 signal sites along the street. These are innocuous marks that would mean nothing to a casual observer, but would tell an asset that you're ready for a meeting. You choose a telephone pole, a mailbox post, and a storm drain grate. You make your marks quickly, trying to look natural, trying not to attract attention, even though this is just training. An instructor appears from nowhere. "Too obvious," he says. "You lingered too long at the telephone pole. Anyone watching would have noticed. In the real world, you just got yourself and your asset arrested. Try again." You do it again, and again, and again, each time finding the flaws in your performance, each time feeling the weight of knowing that in an actual operation, these mistakes would have consequences measured in broken networks and dead sources. The repetition is maddening. The scrutiny is relentless. And you're only on day 1. Lunch comes and goes. More training. This time, surveillance detection. You're put in a car and told to drive a route through the surrounding area. Somewhere behind you, instructors are following. Your job is to identify them without making it obvious that you're looking. You use your mirrors. You make turns. You vary your speed. But the instructors are professionals. They've been doing this longer than you've been alive. They know every trick you might try because they've used those tricks themselves in Moscow, in Beijing, in places where the surveillance teams weren't training instructors, but actual hostile intelligence services. When you return, you're debriefed. You missed 2 cars, the instructor tells you. Both were on you the entire time. In denied territory, that means you're compromised. Your operation is blown. Your asset is dead. You failed. The words hit like physical blows. Failed. On day 1, in a training exercise, you want to argue, to explain, to justify your performance. But the instructor is already walking away. There's no time for ego here, no room for excuses. You either learn or you wash out. Those are the only options. Dinner is subdued. You sit with other trainees who look as shell-shocked as you feel. Everyone failed something today. Everyone got told they would have gotten someone killed. The woman who looked so confident at breakfast is staring at her tray, pushing food around without eating. The former military guy who you assumed would breeze through this is rubbing his temples like he has a migraine. No one is talking much. The legend conversations have dried up. Everyone is too tired, too overwhelmed, too focused on just surviving to the next day. That evening, you're given homework. Study materials on a foreign intelligence service. Detailed dossiers on their methods, their tactics, their known officers. You're expected to memorize this information, to internalize it so completely that you could identify their surveillance techniques on a crowded street in a foreign capital. You spread the papers across your desk and start reading. The words blur together. Your eyes burn. But you keep going because somewhere in your mind, you know that the moment you give up, the moment you decide this is too hard, you're done. The instructors will see it in your eyes. They'll know you've already quit, even if you haven't said the words yet. You fall asleep at your desk. When the alarm goes off at 5, you wake with papers stuck to your face and a crick in your neck that feels like someone drove a spike into your spine. Day 2 is worse. Everything from day 1, but faster. More information. Higher expectations. The instructors have already identified the weak points in the class. They know who struggled with surveillance detection, who fumbled their cover story, who looked uncertain during the dead drop exercise. And now they're going to press those weaknesses until something breaks. You're sent back to the fake street for more dead drop training. But this time, there are role players, actors pretending to be civilians. Some of them are just background. Others are playing counterintelligence officers. Your job is to complete your dead drop while looking natural. Just another person going about their day. Nothing suspicious, nothing worth a second glance. You approach the drop site, a trash can at the corner. You're supposed to leave a package wrapped in newspaper on top of the other garbage. Simple. Except as you get close, you see a man standing near the trash can. He's looking at his phone. Probably just background. Probably nothing to worry about. But what if he's surveillance? What if this is part of the test? You hesitate. The man looks up. Your eyes meet for a fraction of a second. You abort. You walk past the trash can and keep going. Later, in the debrief, the instructor shakes his head. The man was background. You had a clean approach, but you let fear make your decision. In the field, that means your asset waits at the meeting site for intelligence that never comes. They're exposed. They're vulnerable. And when they get arrested, it's because you weren't strong enough to complete a simple task. The criticism stings, but it's also clarifying. You're starting to understand what the CIA needs from its officers, not people who are never afraid, but people who can function through fear, people who can maintain their cover and complete their mission even when every instinct is screaming to run. The classroom work becomes more complex. You're learning about recruitment, the 6-step cycle that CIA officers use to turn foreigners into American spies. It's called SADRAT, spot, assess, develop, recruit, agent handling, and termination. Former CIA officers who've shared their experiences describe this as a courtship. You don't just walk up to someone and offer them money to betray their country. You spot someone with access to valuable intelligence. You assess whether they might be vulnerable to approach. You develop a relationship with them over months or even years. You recruit them only when you're certain they'll say yes. Then you handle them as an ongoing source. And eventually, you terminate the relationship when they're no longer useful or when the risk becomes too high. You're sent into the simulated town square to practice bumps. This is where you accidentally encounter a target and strike up a conversation. The goal is to seem natural, friendly, unthreatening. You're trying to manufacture a reason for a second meeting, an opportunity to deepen the relationship, to move from stranger to acquaintance to friend, and eventually, months down the line, to the moment where you reveal your true purpose and make the recruitment pitch. Your target is an instructor playing the role of a low-level official at a foreign embassy. You've been given his legend, his background, his interests. Your job is to find common ground and build rapport. You approach him at a coffee shop. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Standard opening. He looks up, evaluates you for a second, then shakes his head. You sit. You order coffee. You wait for the right moment to start a conversation. But the moment never comes. He's absorbed in a book. You can't find an opening. The minutes tick past. You finish your coffee. He's still reading. Finally, in desperation, you try a clumsy line about the book. He looks at you with barely concealed contempt, mumbles something polite, and goes back to reading. You failed. The bump didn't lead to conversation. There will be no second meeting. In real operations, you just wasted weeks of surveillance and planning on an approach that went nowhere. In the debrief, the instructor is blunt. You waited too long. You were paralyzed by overthinking. In the field, opportunities are fleeting. You need to be able to start a conversation with anyone, anywhere, under any circumstances. If you can't do that, you're useless to the agency. The failures accumulate. Each one chips away at your confidence. You watch other trainees who seem to excel at everything. The former military officer who struggled on day one has found his rhythm. He's smooth in the bump exercises, natural, charming, the kind of person who can talk to anyone. The young woman from breakfast is brilliant in the classroom. She absorbs information like a sponge and regurgitates it flawlessly in the quizzes. You're somewhere in the middle. Not the best, not the worst, but definitely not impressive. The murder board goes up at the end of the first week. You're in the bottom third of the class. Not at the very bottom, but close enough to feel the heat. You see your name on that list, and something cold settles in your stomach. Other trainees avoid eye contact with those ranked low. It's like you're already contaminated with failure. Like washing out might be contagious. That weekend, you're allowed a few hours of personal time. But you can't leave the facility. You can't call family. You can't access the internet. You're trapped in this simulation with nothing to do but study or stew in your own anxiety. Some trainees go for runs in the woods. Others cluster in small groups, discussing the week's training. You sit alone in your room, reading the materials again, trying to figure out what you're missing. Why can't you just be better at this? Week 2 begins with surveillance exercises in Washington, D.C. You're loaded into vans and driven out of Camp Peary. It's strange seeing the real world again after a week in the bubble. Regular people going about their lives, oblivious to the fact that a van full of CIA trainees just passed them on the highway. You're given a target, a specific person you need to follow without being detected. And somewhere in the city, instructors are watching to see if you can do it. Your target is a man in a gray suit. He starts at a metro station. You follow him down to the platform, trying to look like just another commuter. He boards a train. You board the same car, but not too close. You find a seat where you can see him without staring. He rides for 3 stops, then gets off. You follow. Up the escalator, out onto the street. He walks 2 blocks, then enters a coffee shop. You wait outside, watching through the window. He orders, sits, pulls out a laptop. So far, so good. You feel like you're doing it right. But then you notice something. Another person from your training class is across the street, also watching the coffee shop. You weren't supposed to see them. The exercise is individual. But somehow, you've both been assigned the same target. Or maybe this is another layer of the test. Maybe you're supposed to identify other surveillance. You don't know. The uncertainty gnaws at you. The target leaves the coffee shop. You follow. But you're distracted now, trying to figure out if that other trainee is still out there. You lose focus for just a second. The target turns a corner. When you round that same corner, he's gone. Vanished. You check doorways, side streets. Nothing. You've lost him in the middle of Washington, D.C. An instructor appears from a nearby car. "Come with me," she says. You get in. The drive back to Camp Peary is silent. You know you failed. You don't need her to tell you. That evening's debrief confirms it. You let your awareness of other elements in the environment distract you from your primary target. Surveillance is about singular focus. You watch your target and nothing else. The moment, your attention wavers. You've lost them. In the real world, that means hours of setup time wasted. Possibly a blown operation. Definitely a black mark on your record. The criticisms are starting to feel personal. Every instructor who evaluates your performance finds something wrong. Your cover story has minor inconsistencies. Your brush pass technique is too obvious. Your communication tradecraft is sloppy. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Each individual failure is small, but they add up. They compound, and the weight of them starts to crush your spirit. By week 3, you're sleeping 4 hours a night. The rest of the time is spent studying, practicing, trying desperately to improve. The physical training hasn't let up. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. Your mind is foggy from exhaustion, and the training keeps getting harder. You're introduced to interrogation resistance. This is where some sources suggest the farm used to employ controversial techniques. As far as witnesses say, a former CIA officer named Bill Wagner attended a 3-week interrogation course at Camp Peary in 1970, which he described as the agency's premier course. According to his account, interrogators in training practiced methods including sleep deprivation, deliberately tainted food, and mock executions. However, these techniques were reportedly dropped from the curriculum after the Watergate scandal due to increased scrutiny of CIA practices. Modern resistance training, from what former trainees have shared publicly, focuses more on psychological resilience than physical duress. You're taught to recognize interrogation tactics, to understand how hostile intelligence services might try to break you if you're ever captured. The training involves mock captures, scenarios where you're grabbed during an exercise, hooded, and taken to a holding area. You're questioned for hours. The interrogators probe your legend, looking for cracks. They attack your weak points. They try to confuse you, exhaust you, make you slip up. During one exercise, you're held in a small room for what feels like forever. You have no idea what time it is, no food, limited water. An interrogator comes in every few hours with the same questions. What's your real name? Who do you work for? What's your mission? You stick to your cover story. But the repetition wears you down. The isolation becomes oppressive. When they finally release you, you're shaking. Not from fear, exactly. From the psychological weight of maintaining a lie under pressure. The debrief is brutal. You held your cover, but your body language gave you away. A trained interrogator would have known you were lying within the first 5 minutes. In the real world, that means you're getting enhanced interrogation. You're disappearing into a black site. Your career is over, and you're lucky if you ever see home again. You want to scream that this isn't fair, that you did hold your cover, that you didn't break. But not breaking isn't the same as being convincing. And in the CIA, there's no partial credit. You either pass or you fail. You're either good enough to operate in denied territory, or you're a liability who will get people killed. The murder board updates weekly. You've been hovering in the bottom third for 3 weeks now. You haven't climbed. You haven't fallen further. You're stuck in purgatory. Some of your fellow trainees have already washed out. The confident military officer who found his rhythm in week 2 had a catastrophic failure during a recruitment exercise. He blew his cover. The asset figured out he was CIA. In the real world, that would mean arrest, torture, possibly execution for the asset. In training, it means you're escorted out of Camp Peary that same day. No goodbyes, no ceremony, just gone. The attrition is visible. Your original class had about 40 people. By week 4, you're down to 30. Every week, a few more disappear. Sometimes it's dramatic. A major failure during an exercise. Sometimes it's quiet. Someone just stops showing up to training, and you never learn why. The instructors don't discuss it. The other trainees don't ask. Because wondering about who washed out and why only plants seeds of doubt in your own mind. You're moved into more advanced tradecraft. Covert communication using dead letterboxes that are actually serviced in the real world outside Camp Peary. As far as witnesses say, trainees conduct exercises in nearby towns, leaving signals and messages in locations that look completely innocent to civilians, but follow protocols used by actual case officers. You're taught how to use burst transmitters. Encrypted communication devices that send entire messages in milliseconds, too fast for hostile signals. Intelligence to intercept and decode in real time. You learn to maintain operational security even when you think you're alone. Because in denied areas, you're never alone. There are always cameras, always microphones, always eyes watching. The simulated world expands. The town square at Camp Peary transforms into different scenarios. One day, it's a Middle Eastern marketplace. The next, it's a European cafe district. The role players change their characters. They speak different languages. They react differently to your approaches. You're forced to adapt constantly, to think on your feet, to maintain your cover even when everything around you changes without warning. You have a breakthrough in week 5. During a surveillance detection run, you successfully identify all the vehicles following you. You execute your route perfectly. Clean turns. Effective use of choke points. You arrive at your destination knowing for certain that you weren't followed. The debrief is the first positive feedback you've received in weeks. Well done, the instructor says. That's the standard we expect. Now do it every time. Every time. That's the part that breaks most people. Not the individual failures, but the sustained perfection required. You can't just be good sometimes. You have to be flawless always. One mistake in a career can end everything. One moment of carelessness can destroy a network you've spent years building. The pressure is suffocating. The weight of it never lets up. The classroom work shifts to targeting packages and intelligence analysis. You're learning to build comprehensive profiles on potential recruitment targets. What motivates them? What vulnerabilities they have? How to approach them? What to say to make them believe you're someone worth trusting? According to former CIA officers who've discussed their training publicly, these skills form the core of a case officer's work. The spy world isn't like the movies. There are rarely car chases or shootouts. Mostly, it's building relationships, gaining trust, convincing someone to betray their country because they believe in you. You're given a fictional target, a mid-level official in a foreign government. You have to build a complete recruitment plan, how you'd spot them, how you'd assess their vulnerability, how you'd develop a relationship over time, how you'd eventually make the pitch. Your plan is torn apart in peer review. Other trainees identify flaws in your approach. The instructors pile on. Too rushed, too obvious, too risky. The target would smell you coming from a mile away. By week 6, you're starting to understand why the washout rate is so high. It's not that the training is physically impossible. It's that the mental and emotional demands never stop. You're playing a character 24 hours a day. You're maintaining operational security even in your sleep. You're being evaluated constantly, knowing that any mistake could be the one that ends your career before it starts. The stress is designed to simulate the pressure of actual field work, and if you can't handle it in training, with safety nets and do-overs, you certainly can't handle it in Moscow or Beijing, where the consequences are real. You notice changes in yourself. You're becoming paranoid. You second-guess every interaction. When a fellow trainee asks you a simple question, you wonder if it's really simple or if they're testing you. When an instructor gives you positive feedback, you wonder what they're really thinking. The line between the simulation and reality begins to blur. Your legend feels more real than your actual identity. Sometimes you catch yourself thinking in character, using your cover name in your internal monologue. This is the objective, according to former trainees who've written about their experiences. The farm is designed to transform you, to strip away your civilian identity and rebuild you as an intelligence officer. But the process is brutal, and not everyone survives it with their psyche intact. By week 7, a major exercise arrives. You're being tested on everything you've learned: surveillance detection, recruitment, communication, operational security. The scenario is complex. You're operating under non-official cover, meaning you're pretending to be a civilian rather than a diplomat. You have to spot a potential asset, build a relationship, and execute a recruitment pitch, all while avoiding hostile surveillance and maintaining perfect cover. The exercise spans 3 days. You're given minimal sleep, minimal guidance. You have to make decisions in real time based on your training. On day 1, you successfully spot your target at a social function. You initiate a conversation. You get a phone number. So far, so good. Day 2, you arrange a coffee meeting. The conversation flows naturally. You find common ground. You start building rapport. Day 3 is the recruitment pitch. This is where everything hangs in the balance. You meet the target at a quiet restaurant. You've practiced this moment 100 times in your head. You know what you're going to say. You've rehearsed the approach. But when the moment comes, when you look across the table and see the target waiting expectantly, your mind goes blank. The words you prepared evaporate. You fumble through an awkward pitch that sounds nothing like what you rehearsed. The target's expression shifts from curiosity to confusion to alarm. They stand up. They leave. You've blown it. The debrief is devastating. You had everything set up perfectly. The relationship was there. The trust was building. But when it mattered most, you choked. In the real world, that recruitment attempt just burned a year of careful cultivation. The target is now suspicious of any Americans who approach them. You've made it harder for every CIA officer who comes after you. This is a critical failure. Critical failure. Those words echo in your mind as you walk back to your dormitory. You see your reflection in a window. Dark circles under your eyes. Hollow cheeks. You've lost weight. You look haunted. And you are. Haunted by every mistake, every failure, every moment where you weren't good enough. The updated murder board shows you've dropped further. You're now in the bottom quarter of what remains of your class. Several names have disappeared entirely. The woman who was so brilliant in the classroom? Gone. She couldn't handle the field exercises. The social skills required for recruitment didn't come naturally to her, and despite her intellectual gifts, she washed out. Another trainee, someone you'd become friendly with, is also gone. You never found out why. They were just there one day and gone the next. Week 8 brings advanced defensive driving. You're taught to flip cars, to conduct J-turns at high speed, to ram through blockades, to respond to ambushes. The training is conducted on a closed course, but the speeds are real. The dangers are real. One trainee crashes during an evasive maneuver. The car rolls. Emergency personnel pull him out. He's alive, but injured. And he's also done. Medical washout. Just like that, a career over because of a split-second error during a high-speed exercise. The tension in the remaining class is palpable. Everyone is exhausted. Everyone is strung out from weeks of constant evaluation and stress. Small conflicts erupt. Tempers flare. This, too, is part of the test. The instructors are watching to see how you handle interpersonal stress. Whether you can maintain professionalism even when you're at the end of your rope. Some trainees crack. They have emotional breakdowns. They lash out at instructors or fellow students. They're escorted away for medical evaluation and never return. You're holding on by your fingernails. Every morning is a battle to get out of bed. Every exercise is an ordeal. You're making stupid mistakes, forgetting details of your legend, fumbling communication protocols, missing surveillance during detection runs. Each mistake is noted. Each failure is logged. The file on your performance grows thicker with negative evaluations. Week 9, you're pulled into an office. The instructor behind the desk is someone you haven't seen before. Higher ranking, you can tell from the way others defer to them. They have your file open. They're reading through it slowly, deliberately. The silence stretches for what feels like hours. You're struggling, they finally say. Not a question. A statement of fact. You nod. There's no point in denying it. You're in the bottom quartile. Your evaluations show consistent underperformance across multiple disciplines. Your surveillance detection is weak. Your recruitment skills are below standard. Your ability to maintain cover under pressure is questionable. Each word is a hammer blow. At this point in the training cycle, we have to make decisions about who continues and who doesn't. Do you understand what I'm saying? You understand. You're on the edge. One more serious failure, and you're done. Yes, you manage to say. Your voice sounds distant, like it belongs to someone else. Here's the reality, the instructor continues. Not everyone is cut out for this work. That's not a judgment on your character or your intelligence or your patriotism. It's simply a recognition that the demands of being a CIA case officer are extraordinary. We need people who can function flawlessly under sustained pressure. Who can lie convincingly to people they're close to? Who can send assets into danger knowing they might not come back? Who can live double lives for years without losing themselves? Not everyone can do that. Most people can't, actually. You want to argue, to promise you'll do better, to beg for another chance. But the words stick in your throat, because deep down, in a place you haven't wanted to acknowledge, You know the instructor is right. You're not sure you can do this. The last 9 weeks have broken something fundamental in you. The person who walked through the gates of Camp Peary, full of determination and idealism, is gone. What's left is hollow, exhausted, barely hanging on. You have 1 week, the instructor says. We're giving you one more comprehensive evaluation, a final test of everything you've learned. If you pass, you continue. If you don't, you're out. Use this week to rest, to study, to prepare, because this is your last chance. The meeting ends. You walk out into the cold Virginia afternoon. Winter has deepened while you've been trapped in the simulation. The trees are bare. The sky is gray. Everything feels heavy, oppressive. You think about quitting right now, just walking to the admin building and signing the papers that would release you from this program. Going home, returning to your old life, admitting defeat, but something stops you. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's stubbornness. Maybe it's the fact that you've invested 9 weeks of hell into this, and the idea of walking away with nothing is unbearable. You decide to push through 1 more week, to give it everything you have left, and if you still fail, at least you'll know you tried. The week leading up to the final evaluation is surreal. You're operating on pure adrenaline and coffee. Sleep is minimal. When you do manage to close your eyes, you dream in code. Your subconscious runs surveillance detection routes. You wake up whispering your legend to yourself. Your roommate, if you still had one, would think you'd lost your mind. But you don't have a roommate anymore. The last person you shared your dorm with washed out 2 weeks ago. Now you're alone with your obsessive preparation. You review every technique, every protocol, every piece of tradecraft you've been taught. You practice brush passes in your room using a coffee mug and a book. You rehearse cover stories until they feel more natural than your real background. You study surveillance detection until you can visualize every possible configuration of vehicles and how to defeat them. You've become a ghost of yourself, a person made entirely of procedures and protocols and contingency plans. The final evaluation begins on a Monday morning. You're given a complete operational scenario. You're deploying to an unnamed foreign capital to recruit a source with access to that country's nuclear program. Everything from the past 9 weeks will be tested. You'll run surveillance detection routes, execute dead drops, service communication sites, build a relationship with an asset over multiple meetings, and finally, make a recruitment pitch, all while avoiding a simulated hostile intelligence service that's actively hunting for foreign spies. The scenario plays out over 3 days. You barely sleep. You're moving constantly, running routes, checking for surveillance, making contact with the asset. Every move is being watched and evaluated by instructors you can't see. Every decision is being logged. The pressure is inhuman. You feel like you're operating on the edge of collapse. Your hands shake during dead drops. Your mind goes fuzzy during asset meetings. You have to physically force yourself to focus, to stay in character, to complete each task. On the final day, you make the recruitment pitch. You sit across from the asset in a quiet corner of a coffee shop. The asset is played by a senior instructor, someone who's done this for real, recruiting actual spies in actual denied areas. You deliver your pitch. You explain why working with the CIA serves their interests, why they can trust you, why this relationship will be worth the risk. The words come out smoother than you expected. The weeks of desperation have stripped away your self-consciousness. You're too tired to second-guess yourself anymore. You just say what needs to be said. The asset looks at you for a long moment. Then they nod. Okay, they say. I'll do it. The recruitment is successful. You've passed that element of the test, but there's no time to celebrate. You still have to exfiltrate from the area without being caught, to service one final dead drop, to disappear back into your cover identity without leaving any traces of your intelligence work. You complete the final tasks. You drive the final surveillance detection route and confirm you're black, meaning free of surveillance. You return to Camp Peary and wait for the debrief. The other trainees who went through the same evaluation look just as wrecked as you feel. Some are confident they passed. Others are clearly certain they failed. You honestly don't know. You gave everything. Whether everything was enough remains to be seen. The debrief comes the next morning. You're called into an office. The same senior instructor who warned you a week ago is waiting. Your file is open on the desk. Thicker now, full of evaluations from the final exercise. They read through it in silence. You sit there, heart hammering, trying to breathe normally. This is it. This is the moment where you find out if the last 9 weeks meant anything. Your surveillance detection was adequate, the instructor begins. Not perfect, but adequate. You identified most of the surveillance elements. You executed your routes with acceptable precision. Your heart lifts slightly. Acceptable is better than failing. Your communication tradecraft was solid. Clean drops. No operational security breaches. Your cover maintenance was consistent throughout the exercise. You allow yourself to hope. Maybe you made it. Maybe you passed. Maybe all the suffering was worth it. However, the instructor continues, and that single word crushes the hope like an empty can. Your recruitment pitch, while ultimately successful, showed significant weaknesses. Your body language indicated stress. Your verbal presentation lacked the confidence that would inspire trust in a real asset. An experienced target would have picked up on your uncertainty. In a denied area, that uncertainty could have led to rejection of the pitch or, worse, the target reporting you to their security services. The instructor closes the file. You did enough to pass the final evaluation. Technically. But passing the evaluation isn't the same as being ready for operational deployment. We have concerns about your ability to function effectively under sustained field pressure. Your performance has been inconsistent throughout the training cycle. While you've shown improvement in some areas, you've plateaued in others. And in this profession, plateauing means falling behind. You know what's coming. You can see it in the instructor's expression. The decision has already been made. This meeting is just the formality of delivering it. After reviewing your complete file and consulting with the other instructors, we've made the determination that you are not operational material at this time. You're being removed from the career trainee program effective immediately. You'll be debriefed, required to sign additional non-disclosure agreements, and released from Camp Peary within 48 hours. You'll return to your previous employment with a cover story that you worked for a consulting firm that downsized. No one will ever know you were here. No one will ever know what you attempted. The words wash over you. You're being washed out. After 9 weeks of hell. After giving up everything. After transforming yourself into someone you barely recognize. It wasn't enough. You weren't good enough. The dream is over. I want to be clear about something, the instructor adds. This is not a reflection on you as a person. You have qualities that would make you valuable to the agency in other capacities. Intelligence analysis, support roles. But as a case officer operating in denied territory, you don't meet our threshold. And it's better to make that determination here, in training, than in the field where the consequences of failure are measured in lives lost. You nod mechanically. There's nothing to say, no argument to make. The decision is final. You stand up, shake the instructor's hand. walk out of the office. The Virginia afternoon is cold and gray. You're standing in the same spot where you stood 9 weeks ago, full of hope and ambition. Now you're empty, used up, cast aside. Over the next 2 days, you go through out processing. You sign forms. You return equipment. You sit through additional security briefings about what you can and cannot say about your time at Camp Peary, which is essentially nothing. You're given a sanitized employment record showing you worked for a consulting firm. References are provided. Your legend has shifted one final time, from CIA trainee to failed consultant. A cover story that will follow you for the rest of your life. You pack your few belongings. You turn in your badge. And then you're escorted to the gate. The same gate you entered 9 weeks ago. The black Suburban that brought you in will now take you away. As you pass through the checkpoint and leave Camp Peary behind, you look back at the trees, the buildings half hidden in the forest, the secrets buried behind chain-link fences and barbed wire. You failed. But as the instructor said, most people fail. The CIA's standards are inhuman, precisely because the work demands inhuman qualities. The ability to lie without conscience, to manipulate without guilt, to send people into danger knowing you're safe, to live double lives for years without cracking. These aren't normal human capabilities. They're the skills of a very specific type of person, and you're not that person. The Suburban drives away from Camp Peary. You watch the facility disappear in the mirror, and you realize something strange. Despite the failure, despite the humiliation, despite the fact that you'll never tell anyone what you really tried to do, you feel a sense of relief. The pressure is gone. The constant evaluation is over. You can be yourself again. Whoever that is after 9 weeks of pretending to be someone else. You return to your old life with a generic story about a job that didn't work out. Friends and family don't pry too deeply. People lose jobs all the time. It happens. You find new employment. You settle back into civilian rhythms. But something has changed. You look at the world differently now. You notice surveillance cameras everywhere. You check your mirrors constantly when driving. You evaluate strangers in coffee shops, wondering what their real story is. Camp Peary left marks on you, invisible scars that only you can see. Sometimes you wonder about the people who made it through, the trainees who passed where you failed. Where are they now? What covers are they living under? What operations are they running? You'll never know. That world is closed to you now. You caught a glimpse behind the curtain, and then the curtain closed again, leaving you on the outside looking in. The CIA continues its work. The farm continues to train new generations of case officers. Most of them will wash out just like you did. A few will make it through and deploy to hostile territories, where they'll recruit spies, steal secrets, and shape world events in ways the public will never know about. The work continues. The mission continues. But without you. And maybe, in the quiet moments late at night when you're honest with yourself, you can admit that's for the best. Because the cost of becoming a CIA case officer isn't just the 9 weeks of training. It's the decades of living a lie afterward. It's never being able to tell your spouse what you really do. It's sending assets into danger and watching them get arrested or killed. It's living with the knowledge that you've manipulated people, ruined lives, compromised morals, all in service of national security. It's carrying secrets that would crush most people. It's being the kind of person who can do all that and sleep at night. You're not that person. The farm revealed that truth, and in its own brutal way, maybe that was a gift. Better to learn your limits in a controlled environment than to discover them in the field where failure costs lives. Better to wash out and return to normal life than to make it through training only to crack during your first operational deployment. The trees at Camp Peary keep their secrets. The instructors train new classes. The simulation continues. But you're out now, released from that world, free to live an ordinary life with ordinary pressures and ordinary consequences. And after 9 weeks at the farm, ordinary feels like a blessing. If you made it this far through this journey into one of America's most secretive training programs, I'd really appreciate if you could hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me create more content, exploring the hidden corners of intelligence work, true crime, and the darker chapters of history. Let me know in the comments what other secretive organizations or training programs you'd like to hear about. I'm always looking for the next story to dig into. Thanks for listening. Until next time, sleep well. And remember that the world of shadows and secrets continues whether we're aware of it or not. The spies are out there. The operations are ongoing. The intelligence game never stops. We just get to observe it from a safe distance without having to sacrifice our identities or our souls in service of the mission. Good night.